They need to know right now that God will strike them down. My mother was raised a Southern Baptist, and she converted to Catholicism to marry my dad.
No, he probably went to the bank.
Oh, I'll touch you. No.
All right, good morning. Ron, do y'all want to start today with your guys' presentation and then your proposal, and then we can go?
Yes, but
morning, everybody. My name is Brad Ray. I'm a sergeant with the Violent Crimes Division. We're here to update. We're here to give our presentation on updating the promotion system. I know a lot of folks are waiting for our count on 16, so we'll just consider this like a dress rehearsal.
Microphone.
Is that right? Is that working?
Just unlocking
Can I just speak really loudly?
I don't know if it's making it.
We got a actual
Yeah, it's red.
It's got a red light
No, I mean,
here.
I did
just
up
not
there, yeah, so.
None of these
Did
are.
any of them work?
No, ma'am.
Well, Lowell is messing with something over there.
I don't think what I touch, it goes to him. That cable that I fixed the hole in the floor over there.
No, Bernard, we got one. I think it's working. You guys test it out?
Yeah, there you
Cable that I fixed the hole.
Like I said, my name is Brad Ray. I'm a sergeant with our Violent Crime Investigations Division.
My name is Shane Street. I'm a lieutenant with our police department. Been here for 20 years. I'm currently assigned to our SIU division, our cold case and missing persons unit.
So the system that we came up with, I'm not going to read the PowerPoint, by the way, and that may be more interesting for somebody else, so go ahead and read it. The system that Lieutenant Streepy and I have developed and talked about and want to present to you today, we view it as a holistic system. We think that promotions in our department are done in kind of the most efficient manner possible, but maybe not, maybe don't seek the best outcomes. And we understand that some of the aspects we currently use are universal across police departments and across the entire country, and they need to remain in our system. We want to bolster or add to our process. We're not looking to take anything away. There are probably some minor tweaks to the system that we have that could be made as a part of the overall change. But the overall change we want to make right now, because it is very complex, it is somewhat experimental, we believe. We think that it would be best to implement it for the rank of commander only at this time. Now, again, because there are a lot of complex changes that we want to make, and there's a lot of things that may or may not work perfectly the first cycle of this contract, we want to work with you guys as much as possible to iron out all the language and all the processes we can, and then maybe have language in the contract that allows us to implement this process for lower ranks if it's found to be acceptable to all the stakeholders we have. And we understand there are stakeholders on our side, on your side, there are stakeholders in the community. Everybody has a vested interest in this, because when leadership of the department is lacking, then the service that we provide to the community is going to go. So the system, as we've devised it or as we envision it, again, it involves the written test in the assessment center there in the middle. Before those processes occur, there's a mentorship process that we want to formalize. There's a leadership academy that we have done in the past and want to get back to. And then the elements we already have, the written test, the assessment center, and afterwards, we also feel it's important to add a probationary period and continuing education for somebody who gets into a rank. So the mentorship element first, again, it happens at the police department every day. As a first line supervisor, I have people that I mentor. As a lieutenant, Lieutenant Streepy has probably 20, 25, 30 people that he mentors, either directly or indirectly. But we believe this process needs to be formalized. Now, as a part of the promotion process, I don't believe, or we don't believe, that mentorship or a lack thereof from any individual in the department should stop them from entering the promotional process. So essentially, you wouldn't have people say, you're not ready to be a supervisor, so we're not going to let you try to be a supervisor. It would be an avenue for someone to seek improvement, or for a supervisor currently to identify people that they believe would be good leaders in the police department and encourage them to move through that process.
So as Brad said, this would be an addition to what we're doing now. This Leadership Academy, we don't know how it would be actually set up yet, but we have some ideas. But this would be something that a potential promote would have to attend and pass before they actually enter the next phase of the process. And this came about, just to give you some context of where our thought process is coming from. In 2018, I attended a program at the University of Texas, through the LBJ school. It was a 2-year, what I would describe as a immersion in leadership, where after 2 years, I came out with a lot more skills to apply to my job. As I was going through this process, I realized that we could actually do something like this at our department. It would be very beneficial to help people grow and develop. Then I found out that some of the professors that were involved in that program actually were involved in what used to be called the West Point Leadership Academy, which was something that we did maybe 15 to 20 years ago at our police department. It was more of a voluntary type of deal, but it had outside instructors. It wasn't taught by officers of the police academy. A lot of value in it. So what we envision is something like this, whether it's a 3-week process, once every weekend, something that you have quantifiable results, you pass it, and then you're able to move on to the next phase. And we believe this is going to set up people for success and already start that development process.
And real quick on these two components, I want to address the fact that what we envision over not just the life of this contract, but maybe over the next 10 years or so, is that this would lead to the creation of a career development unit. We recognize that right now our staffing members don't really allow for that because the logistical nature of that job would be pretty difficult for somebody to just jump into, and it would be difficult to manage, again, with just the number of people we have doing other jobs in the police department right now. But at the end of this contract, maybe the next contract, maybe the contract after that, we envision the department having a career development unit. And one of the things that, or one of the reasons I believe that'd be a good idea, it's throughout the Kroll report, they talk about how mentorship specifically will lead to less disparate outcomes, will have more diverse candidates to promote, and identify better candidates, so on and so forth. So this portion, the written test, we don't envision any real changes to. There may be some minor tweaks that you guys might propose, or there may be things that we haven't really thought of. The one thing that I will say to tie it back to the Leadership Academy is that if you had a Leadership Academy that prepared people for actual leadership in the police department, the written test could cover separate material to make it more expansive, or it could cover the material in the Leadership Academy so that people show, for one final kind of semester, final exam type of component, that they are truly prepared for the next step of the process. The Assessment Center, we also don't really have any fundamental changes to the Assessment Center. Obviously, IO Solutions has been providing that for several years now. There are probably other third-party vendors that are capable of doing that as well. The Assessment Center process has its pros and cons. I think everybody that's been through that process or seen it from the outside recognizes it. And we can talk about maybe some of the nuanced details of the Assessment Center, like when the Assessment Center takes place, if it's immediately after the test, or if we give candidates a month or a week or some other time to prepare, if the department offers preparatory classes, or if people seek third-party classes like they currently do. Those are issues we could work out, again, in a subcommittee that I think would be required to hash out all the details of this proposal. The one segment I do want to note at the end is the career review segment. This is something that Lieutenant Streepy sought information from a bunch of other police departments, and one thing that other places are doing that allow a candidate to present themselves personally and defend what they've done in their career, or to explain how their career up to that point has led them to a leadership position. Could be a component that we add to the Assessment Center, or it could be a separate component with our executive staff or command staff. We believe, or I believe at least, and I know Lieutenant Streepy does, that One of the things mentioned in the Kroll report is compensatory systems. The test in and of itself is not a great measurement, but when the test is taken with an assessment center, it leads to fewer disparate outcomes than the test alone. Currently for sergeants, it's a 70% written test, 30% assessment center, and then for the two ranks, it's 50-50. We believe by adding the career review as a third part of the compensatory system, you might be able to do something like 40% written test, 40% assessment center, 20% career review, and again, just see if that leads to fewer disparate outcomes than even the current compensatory system that IO Solutions suggests.
Part of what we'd like to implement that hasn't been done to this point is establishing a probationary period for, in this case, it would be commanders that have just promoted. That probationary period would serve a couple purposes. The one that comes to people's mind is that we have a way to, if a commander, in this case, is not meeting the expectations of the department, they're on probation, just similar to how a brand new cadet will come out of the academy. There's a 15-month period. So this would be that period. What I really want more out of this probationary period is to have a framework that the city and the department has to put in place that provides a roadmap to where that commander should be at certain points in their career. So in the first month, the commander should know X, Y, and Z. We have a system in place for accountability to make sure that's occurring, and that can go on for whatever number of months we decide to make that probationary period. But in the end, what I really feel is beneficial about this, and Sergeant Ray and I have talked about it, is that it will force the city and the department to come up with a framework to where we need to be. As it stands now, there is a framework. I think we can improve on it, especially the accountability portion. So we'd like to see something like this put into place as well. And then finally, this is something that should be going on, continuing education components. However that looks in the future, we just think there needs to be some kind of framework put in place that mandates certain benchmarks, certain schools, certain subjects that in this particular scenario, commanders would have to attend. And again, we feel like we need to put this in the contract because it might be the only way that we can formalize this at this point.
So again, nothing here is actually revolutionary. Other police departments are doing at least one, if not many, of the components of every component that we have in this system. Though each component might have its pros and its cons, of course. As a whole system, we believe this will lead to better candidates. It will lead to more prepared leaders and supervisors, and it will lead to fewer disparate outcomes in the statistics that we are trying to highlight in terms of promoting people through the department. And we're open to any questions you guys have. If you guys want to talk about something else, we can move on to.
Yeah, thank you for that. No, I don't have any questions right now, but I just want to take the time to acknowledge you guys' hard work on this. And honestly, I know, you are unfortunately right. I'm sure a lot of you guys are accustomed to getting criticism thrown your way. But in this scenario, you guys came up with a kind of a non-union type of promotional process, because y'all want better supervisors. We want to have the best supervisors out there as well. And you didn't take a very traditional union approach, so I'm going to commend you guys for your kind of hard work on this issue, because a lot of these things you would not expect an association to come up with as their proposal to management. So, praise should also be given where praise is due, and I want to thank you guys for this. So give us some time to go through it. I know you've given this presentation, I think, maybe it's amended a little bit, I don't know, but you gave a version of this to our command staff at APD. So we'll have a discussion with them about the pros and the cons. And, we also, the next time we meet, if you recall, in the 2018 contract, we adjusted some of the assessment center and the written exam percentages. And then when the Kroll report came out, it just kind of lumped in 2016 to 2020 as their kind of review of assessment centers. So we went back to them saying, hey, you can't just lump in 26 and 17 tests and not account for the fact that we fundamentally changed the scoring in 18, 19, and 20. So tell us kind of from a disparate impact perspective, are we doing worse than the old system, essentially what the 13 contract was? Are we doing better than that? So when they went back, I don't want to misquote them. So we'll have their response, and I'll put their email up on the screen for next time as well. But there is some differences between the old contract and the new, and they did recognize the fact that they probably should have separated that out because it was a pretty big change that we made in the contract. So I don't know if anyone else has any questions. All right, Ron, do you want to go on to your other one?
No.
It's good to see a city built around technology.
We just want to let North Carolina see.
We have a. Yeah. So Article 19 assignment changes, we took a look at it as a team. Started that article, we haven't proposed any changes. Don't give me Russians because I'll mess that up royally. There we go. No substantive changes at the top of Article 19. We think that we have written a pretty good article that works both for our members in the police department. We do have some calendar days in there that I know we've talked about kind of going through later, so I'll gloss over those. Issa, if you'll scroll down to section 5, our substantive changes come in section 5, which is special event assignments. What we've done here is we recognize that we kind of have a couple things going on right now at the same time, and from our perspective, we don't see them slowing down. We're seeing a reduction in our patrol officer staffing. When you account for our long-term, our folks that are out on long-term leave, we have under 1,500 people at work full-time right now. Other folks have been talking about our vacancy rate. I think it's important for everyone on both teams to remember that our vacancy rate is almost artificially low because we did away with 150 FTEs. I say we, council did. So we are trending, we continue to trend in the wrong direction in terms of our staffing, particularly on patrol. With COVID's decline and kind of things kicking back off, we continue to see more and more special events happening. I think most people are aware of, it's very, very possible in this town for us to have
multiple major events going on at one point, or at one time in various parts of the city. So what we've done is we've just expanded the definition of what a special event is I think Donald just got it from dictionary.com or something, right? But just to make it very clear that these events, we don't believe that they should be limited to the ones that we had previously listed. And if you dive back into the rest of this section, really what we're talking about is we recognize that the city, especially with the staffing issues that we have, the city's going to have to at some point move folks around probably to staff these events. We have races that we can't fill. We have soccer games that we can't fill. We have numerous events every week where our special events unit is trying to get people to volunteer for overtime. And many times, I shouldn't say many times, at times we are resorting to either using on-duty resources or changing people's work hours and assignments to cover those events. So all that we're asking for is basically an increase of the events that will be covered by the section, particularly if we're going to change somebody's work hours or days and we don't give those people a 28-day notice as required by the contract, then the 20 hours of admin leave would be awarded to them. I believe that we've only not been able to accomplish this one time in the life of this language being in the contract. And it would be our hope that we never have to give officers 20 hours of admin leave, because we've identified these events either sufficiently enough, we've identified our lack of staffing for these events sufficiently enough to just give people notice. And I think it's reasonable if we're gonna ask people to change their work days, to give folks 28 days notice to do so they can square away things like childcare and schedules with spouses and things of that nature. So not a significant change in our opinion, and not one that realistically should cause that much harm to the city. And again, my hope would be that it doesn't cost the city $1 because we're able to just give people enough notice.
All right, yeah, I mean, I think we have a little bit different opinion. If you can scroll up to the definitions, I think just that the way you guys have worded it, it's gonna include, it's easier to say what it doesn't include, because you're right, we have so many baseball events, ball games, and you call it so baseball, basketball, football, parades, festivals, and especially, with COVID, as the numbers go down, I'm sure these things are gonna go up. I think the question that I would have for you is, we talked about this as a team. I think we just have a fundamental, maybe difference of opinion, and maybe we don't have all the facts. We don't think we have moved people's schedules outside of the listed events, and we've given notice for. So if you have things that qualify under the blue category that we have changed people's schedules for, without the 28-day notice, just let us know, because then we can look into that, because we're under the assumption that we haven't done that.
I guess my question back would be, if you haven't done that and there's no desire to do it, what the harm would be in including this language? If it's never happened and it's not gonna happen, where the harm would be in just allowing for that assurance that if it did happen, an officer could be compensated?
Yeah, I think the question comes into kind of, how this has been, I think the definition is pretty broad right now. It says things like especially including roadways and often a city permit. Some of these things may, I don't really know the permitting process. Some of these things may have, happen before 28 days even happens. Rescheduled ball game happens, or I have no idea. And so I just think that we have to talk more and delve really into, if you want to increase the list, let's do that, but when you leave it broadly to say, means a public event, and then you use such as, and, you know, I just think there's a ton of things that can qualify as a public event, you know, so just a little bit more specificity. We're not, you know, we're not opposed to it. I think, for example, right now, ACL isn't listed on there, but we give 28 days notice for employees for ACL, because it's the right thing to do, right? I mean, yes, under the old days, we would move people, you know, 2 weeks from now, even though we knew South by Southwest was happening in March, specific time, and, you know, we knew we needed folks to adjust their schedule, we just didn't do it until the very end, right? So it took a contract change for us to get around to doing the right thing, but now we're doing the right thing and expanded it even to events that aren't listed. So I don't think we're on opposite pages. I don't think we're trying to say, no, we're demanding to, you know, screw somebody out of their, you know, babysitting gig that they need for, you know, to have somebody watch their kid. We're not trying to do that. We're just trying to make sure we limit, you know, kind of, we all know what we're talking about when we say a word like public event, so.
Yeah, and I agree with you that, and I'll say this, that the city has done a really good job, the department's done a really good job of navigating these waters, but the reality of the situation is, yesterday we had more patrol officers than we do today, and tomorrow we'll have less patrol officers than we do today, right? And so that is trending in the wrong direction for our department, and we weekly, I mean, I can get on my city email right now, and I just deleted all the overtime assignments, and can have between 50 and 100 emails from supervisors looking for overtime patrol shifts to be filled, right? Weekly, I get emails from our special events unit trying to staff a multitude of events. Very often, we open those overtime assignments up to supervisors at the sergeant rank because we can't get enough volunteers, right? And so we know that as those numbers continue to move in the wrong direction, as officers continue to get burned out because they're working so much voluntary overtime. And there's no slowdown of special events happening in the city, right? I don't believe anybody at City Hall is going to push to stop allowing events to happen because we don't have enough officers volunteering to work in these security roles. I just think that over the life of this contract, it will be necessary. I think the city, the department will be put into a position because of staffing numbers where they have no choice but to say, hey, I can't have a marathon, right? It is not safe for anybody to run a marathon if I can't effectively control those street closures, right? And is the city going to say, hey, we don't have enough cops signed up for overtime to run a marathon? No, they're going to say, hey, chiefs, figure out how to keep this marathon safe, push forward. And so I think when our department is put in that situation, we're going to have to figure something out, right? And that it's either going to be we're diverting on-duty resources to go fill those assignments, or a decision will be made. I don't want to divert on-duty resources because now I've left a section of the city unpatrolled. And your answer is one or the other, right? Either I'm getting volunteers, I'm using on-duty resources, or I'm going to change somebody's assignment to come work this event. Or I guess we could cancel an event. I just don't think that's a reasonable thing that's going to happen. And so, again, you said it, like when praise is due, we should give praise, and I'll give praise. Like I can think of one time, right after we got the contract done, where people got 20 hours of leave because we couldn't figure out a way to give people 20-day notice. And all we're saying is, if we're going to do that and we don't have the ability to give someone 20-day notice, I think it's reasonable, whether it's a ball game that gets popped up at the last second, or it's a marathon that we've been working for months trying to get volunteers for, if you make the decision to say, Devin, you have to change your days in 2 weeks, I don't think it's unreasonable to say, and because I've given you this 2-week notice to find childcare, to figure out your life, we're going to compensate you with an additional 20 hours.
All right, so if I can just translate this, I think what you're trying to say is this may not be an issue right now, but the trending of how the officers' separations are going and the trending at the public events going up, kind of those things are going in opposite directions. You happen to be negotiating right now, this is your time to try to do preventive maintenance to make sure this kind of doesn't end up at a point in 2 years from now where, I mean, that's what you're trying to say, is now's your time. Okay.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Okay, all right, understood.
I'd just ask one question. If there are specific events that have the potential to fit into this new expanded definition, share those with us so we can kind of run them through the process and see how they compare to the ones that have historically been used. And again, it may be predicting the future, but to the extent we've had that experience, I'd like to know what you think the ones are that maybe should have been in this already.
Well, I think the problem that we're gonna run into is, I mean, if you'd asked us in 2018, you know, would there be a MotoGP event the same weekend as, you know, Texas Relays as the same weekend as, I can't remember what the other event is. Like
Soccer game.
Yeah, soccer game. Like there's Spam-A-Rama's coming back there, right? So there's all these events, and it's, when you look at like what is Austin, like events make this city part of what it is, right? Like I remember being an 18-year-old college kid and wandering downtown to the Pecan Street Festival for the first time, right? And like, in Lake Jackson, Texas, there's no Pecan Street Festival. And it's every single weekend, all across the city, there's events, and there's more events that are trying to come every single day. And so I think we could give you
So it's mostly crystal ball.
we could give you a list of, you know, all the events that we can pull off the internet, and then, but I'll tell you, our desire is going to be to cover all the other events that are coming that we don't even know about.
Well, the marathon's not on there either.
Right.
I mean, that,
Motorcycle races.
All right, we will go through, we have 2 articles to present to you. Okay. So I'll put them up, Becky will explain, and then I'll get color commentary as we go through.
It's Robert, play by play.
Oh, you want this?
Good morning. All right, so for Article 10, we scroll to the bottom. Generally, we accept your change. We added a little minor deletion there because our fear was that this last sentence, such entitlements shall not be changed during the term, that might actually prohibit. I think the intent is that if City Council provides a holiday or some type of benefit, that it would be provided to the APA during the term of this contract, right? And so we kind of felt like this shall not language might actually prohibit that, and we didn't want that if that was the ultimate intent. So I think this is generally an acceptance of your agreement, but tweaking it so it's not disingenuous in any way, if that makes sense. So that's Article 10. So we only have 2 articles today, which would be 10 and 18.
Yeah, and the only other thing on 10 I was going to say is obviously, I think you guys acknowledge this, but you know, if council sets out a holiday specifically excluding public safety, then obviously that wouldn't apply to you. But to the extent they just pass a regular holiday for city employees and they don't exclude anybody, then you would get that. So I think, for example, the term of this last contract, that's what happened with Juneteenth, is they gave a holiday for all city employees, but you didn't get it because of the barrier that we had of, you know, we got the ones that were as of the effective date. So, yeah,
Alright.
And for Article 18, this basically has some additional sort of ripple effects of our last proposal from deleting Article 16 and the changes that we made in Article 17. So that I'll get to, but and then you'll see also that when there's he or she, we've changed it to the gender neutral they or their. And so Section 8 is one of the changes that we have. And so Section A1, the chief may not complain of an act that occurred earlier than 365th day preceding the date the chief discovers such act. For the purposes of this section, discover shall mean the time at which a supervisor at the rank of assistant chief or above has notice of the potential misconduct. So what we're proposing is changing the 180-day deadline to a year, a full year, 365 days, and not that the date, not which the date has occurred, but from which the date is discovered at the level of assistant chief or above. Section 2, this is, I would say, a little bit of cleanup, but also expansion of deadlines. So under the original language, if the act is allegedly related to criminal activity, including the violation of a federal, state, or local law for which the police officer is subject to a criminal penalty, it used to say 180 days. And under 143.056H, the city is allowed to file a letter with the AG if it's criminal conduct. So that you're kind of in the limbo period, right? So you've got your regular policy violations, and then you jump ahead and you've got actual criminal charges. So Section 2 deals with when there's an investigation going on, but there's not actually criminal charges filed yet, right? So under 143.056H, we can expand 180 days if the chief files a letter with the Attorney General, right? And so I think originally that was the intent of Section 2, because my understanding is that the practice was that if an officer is being investigated by the Texas Rangers or whatever, and that the city does file a letter with the AG.
Yeah, or by the Special Investigation Unit of the APD.
Right, correct, if they're in that period. And so what we're doing here is, I think we're just making it a little more explicit that the chief can file a letter with the Attorney General, and we've expanded that deadline to 365 days. Because the way you looked at the original language, it looks like it was just cut off at 180 days from date of discovery. So it's a bit of cleanup, and as well as increasing the 180-day to 365 days, also from the date of discovery. So that's probably the biggest change in Article 18.
And I'll just add to that, I believe that it's our view that the change in Section 2 probably really doesn't make a change in the existing historical practice. That the Section 1 part, which bumps it out from 180 to 365, is the real change. I think what 2 specifies is what's been going on all along, and usually the time frames are not beyond that 1 year anyway. So
it's true.
A lot of them go past that. Some don't, but a lot of them go past that.
Yeah, and a lot of them do go past that. And when you file the letter with the Attorney General, and before we're just relying on the statute, the chief has basically, can do nothing or go to an indefinite suspension. And so I don't really see going to 365 as too much of a detriment, because then there's that ability to kind of work within, something less than indefinite suspension if it's necessary. So that's the main change in Section 8, and specifically Section 2. And the next big change is going to be Section 19. This is one of those ripple effects from deleting Article 16. So Section 19, as what is currently in the contract, has been completely deleted. Our proposal is that it's completely deleted. But what we wanted to salvage is this very first paragraph. So this very first paragraph, it's in red as kind of proposed new language, but other than the change from the 48 to the 24 hours, this actually comes from Article 17 and notice to the officer prior to coming in and giving their statement to IA. And one of the reasons we changed it from 48 to 24 is that if we eliminate the G file and you have access to all these documents, then arguably you need less time to prepare for it. So that's our proposal in terms of section 19. And we've retitled it as well, access to IAD file, because you get access to IAD file, but we definitely did want to preserve the due process protections that you already have, or that you should have. And those are our two proposals. If you have any questions, or Devin, if you have any additional comments.
No, I mean, look, I know you got a lot of new team members on the team. You know, on the extension of the 180s, right? Like we had robust discussions in 2017, I'm sure 2018. I know when I was in this chair, 2018. So, you know, the arguments have not changed. You know, the arguments are essentially, we think, and we would hope that you also don't want fellow coworkers just to quote unquote, you know, get away with something because it was found out on 181st day, right? Like I don't think you want those folks working with you, backing you up, representing your profession out to the public. And, you know, we don't think that that's, you know, just, we think that from our side of it, we don't want folks to, you know, have gotten away with something either because we find out on the 181st day, right? So I think hopefully that's a joint mutual, you know, goal that we have to have folks that have done wrongdoing get the proper discipline, you know, and get the proper remediation, and the folks that have not, you know, not get tainted by the folks that have. You know, I mean, that's essentially, it's the same argument that we've made in 2017 and in 2018. We're fully recognizing the fact that this is a high asking piece that the city is giving, right? Like this is whether or not it's fair, whether or not we have different opinions, it is something that your side values, right? And we recognize the fact that your side and your members value it. You know, if you're an employee on the APA side, I would understand why you value kind of finality and closure after 181st day. We're not asking for complete elimination. You know, on the civilian side, you know, there's nothing stopping city manager from eliminating any employee on the civilian side for something they did, you know, 4 years ago that we find out about, right? So we're not asking for complete elimination, but to ask to go from 180 to make it a year to 365, I think is the request that we're making this time. So.
Well, have y'all identified any cases in which we would catch had we not had that language? And, you know, I'm not asking for specifics, but have we identified? I'm going to use your point against you on this one. Do we know of situations in the life of this contract?
No. So I want to use your point against you. If we don't, then it's not that big of an ask for you. Okay. Now I can tell you in the history.
So it's a no.
So in my time, okay, in the life of this contract, I don't have anything off the top of my head. Okay. I know there's going to be folks on your side, probably in this room, that are split down the middle as to the use of force that happened with Breon King. Some of your folks are going to say it was justified. Some of them are going to say it's a little bit over. That's one example we can give that came out after the 180, right? But I will acknowledge that most of the big, and I know what you're going to say, folks did find out, but not to the level of assistant chief or above, which is how we've defined it now as notice to the city.
And I would disagree with you on that as well.
Okay. For us, I think that the question is, you know, you're asking, do we have that many? And the cases that most folks care about, right, are the uses of force, right? The fender benders, you know, the showing up late for work. I think our public, of course, wants the best behavior, but at the end of the day, those are not the high priority issues. The high priority issues are the uses of force, right? I'll speak for myself, I guess, as a citizen of Austin. For me, that's the high priority issue. So, in that sense, how many, and especially after Breon King, the department, and the city, the department, has put in lots of practices, lots of hoops that all uses of force have to go through, to where it is going to be extremely rare, if not impossible, for a use of force to not get noticed by what we have defined as notice to the city under the new practices that we have in place, right? And those, I believe most of those were put as a direct result. I'm sure they've increased over time, but a lot of those were put into place right after the King video game delay. So, you know, you're gonna say, why do you need this if you can't pull up a case? And I would say, then why won't your side just give it up? Because there's also, you know, you can't think of a case. So I think, you know, there's a little back and forth there, but I think you understand. But Lowell, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Let me make this comment.
You got it.
Okay. And we'll come back and answer all this stuff. But see, when you use the words, you don't want an officer to get away with anything because we discovered it on the 181st day. But that hasn't happened. And we disagree on the one case. That was a choice of the city not to use discovery. You have discovery. All of these use of force, current 143, current contract, any abuse, all those are criminal related. You don't have to be charged with the crime. You get 6 months after you find out about it, even 10 years from now, you could still charge Thomas administratively, and you have 6 months in which to bring the charge. That's the current state of the law. There is nobody getting away with anything. This is another throw it out to make your case. I think it's a legitimate discussion. What should be the statute of limitations? We're proposed to talk about it. We're not trying anyone to escape anything. But it isn't happening here. It's not happening in any 143 city because the things of which people are concerned about are upon discovery. So there's nothing about it getting away. Now, you were out of your district, and a year later I found out you were out of your district. You could write them a written reprimand now, no matter how long it lasts. So, but that isn't what people are, so those are workplace issues that supervisors deal with. So we're talking about serious offenses, except for people just glued to a word, and then you make a statement, and I'm not just picking on you, I'm just saying you made the statement. No, we don't want anyone to get away with anything. We want them to have due process. So we'll try to avoid broad statements, but otherwise I would have just let you say it. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
All right, I understand, and I know, Ron, you've made that argument before on the discovery in the criminal statute. And you know, I didn't mean, I think you know what I intended. I didn't intend to offend anybody, but what I intended was, you know, we both have an incentive to make sure employees are disciplined for acts that should be disciplined for and not disciplined for acts they shouldn't be disciplined for. You know, I think you all want that from your coworkers. I think we want that from us. But I don't know if you wanted anything.
I think the discussion is, I think it's important. I think it's an ongoing discussion. It's happening at every one of the bargaining tables where people are trying to sort these things out. And Devin's comment that the internal aspects of the way the APD reviews these things makes it even less likely that there's not going to be a timely discovery. And I just wanted to emphasize the fact that I think the department is doing its job, its responsibility to make sure things are happening. The way I articulated this, you may remember from the last time around, is we don't want a short time limit to cut off the chief's authority to discipline based on what the truth is. And under the old law, that was a possibility. Whether it happened in particular instances is a matter of independent judgment, but that was the point. Y'all were forthcoming on that issue, and we appreciate your attention on looking at this.
We understand your position.
All right, I think that's it from our side. We don't have anything else for the day. I don't know if y'all will. Okay. And we're gonna caucus, I guess, and we will meet up, what, May 2nd? May 3rd? May 2nd?
May 2nd.
All right, thank you guys.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. introduce me to those guys?